know that Dan won that Mac that's sitting there.
Okay, no.
Yeah, he's getting a screen on, so we should be getting in just a minute.
Vancouver couple Lighthouse Labs.
Uh-huh.
I think they do this 21 days.
The format is like
They do
sharing or like.
Yeah. So however you want to do it, share your project, you can dive into code, challenges, demo it. Yeah, whatever you want. Yeah. So you got 10-ish minutes. And
That's our life.
try not to cut you off, but we'll
Right.
We'll let you know when you get close.
Okay,
cool.
That's still pretty
should have thought about what to say before this exact
Maybe I'll just around here.
Alright, well, stream is live.
Oh no.
All right, everyone. I think we're gonna get going here. So thanks everyone for coming to the
This
February
meeting
meetup
is
of
being
the.
recorded.
Thanks everyone for coming to the February meeting for the AK Devil Alliance. We're gonna do something a little bit different this month. We're gonna try basically a little fireside chat sort of thing. We're gonna have we have 5 people on the schedule to present what they've been working on, kind of tell us a little bit about it, have some time for questions for anything you guys want. I mean, it looks like we got everybody here in Anchorage. It looks like, what do we got, like 4 people, 5 people in Juneau? About the same in Fairbanks? 3? Okay. Well, 3, and then I can't quite see Fairbanks. They're really small on our screen here right at the moment. So,
5.
5? Yeah, that's pretty good. You're doing pretty well. First person up. So there is, for anyone that is on Slack, there was a poll posted in general, right?
Yep.
General today about whether you're interested in a game dev meetup. If you go and vote on that by the end of the day, we will give we have some JetBrains IDE licenses, so we're going to randomly choose somebody that actually voted in the poll to get a JetBrains IDE license. So go ahead and do that this evening. And up now is Wyatt. He's going to be talking about his game Raven's Nest, which is a vehicle combat simulation set in Alaska. So,
Yep. No, you're good.
okay, so take it away.
I don't know where I'm supposed to look. Not that one.
Sorry, it just came out.
Wait. Okay. I don't think I'm on. It's not important. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not that.
Look at the screen.
I'm
Don't
not
worry
that
about
interesting.
it.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Wyatt. Everyone in Anchorage. I'm brand new. I just moved to town like a month ago.
Welcome, Wyatt.
Thank you. I've been living in Bethel for a while, like a long time. I grew up there. So, yeah. I don't think it's going to be anything amazingly interesting technically speaking, but I guess I'll just show what I'm working on, and hopefully people are interested or not bored at least.
Do you want people to ask questions as we go through?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
If you see something interesting,
Okay.
say something, because I'm going to run out of things to say really, really fast. I'm, I guess, technically speaking, I make games. Though I don't make them professionally, I'd make them as a sort of creative hobby. I'd love to do it as a full-time job at some point, but obviously the sort of game development scene in Alaska is not large enough at the moment to sustain multiple people, I guess. So yeah. So I work on them on my own. This is Raven's Nest. Basically, my quick elevator pitch is like the Clash versus Apple in Western Alaska. So it's a sort of punk rock inspired vehicle combat game in which you sort of reclaim construction equipment and like mechanize sort of vehicles to fight people that you don't want in your town. Still very, very early, so as you can see, there's some lovely programmer art, some good animations.
Is that the Yeti from Ski Free?
That's actually, so the game I made before this was, there was a lot of feedback of like, it's like Ski Free, but more interesting. So I made a little Ski Free guy, that's the idea actually. Not that funny, but thank you for actually getting the joke. It's good when somebody understands it. So yeah, a lot of the inspiration behind this game specifically, has come from, somebody saying something?
Is that a question? Nope, I think you're good.
No. Okay. So, Armored Core is a game I really liked as a younger child. I really enjoyed the low poly aesthetic of it and the fact that it was sort of these instance missions that worked together to make a larger story. So that's something I wanted to replicate here. Also, the customization is really cool. So one of the important things that I thought was cool to have was customizable emblems. So if you look, there's a little flag right here, with a little logo, a little raven. Any questions? No? Okay, good. A little flag that you can customize in-game with a very, very simple sprite editor that I built. Basically just using an array. You load in an image, it makes an array out of it. You click, you reassign the array. When you hit the save button, it re-exports that, and there's no load time to it. It's immediately available both in engine, and it outputs a file to your desktop. So if you wanted to open it up in paint.net or something, you could customize it there. If there's something fancy, or if you wanted to use this as a simple sprite editor, it's relatively functional. Relatively functional, as I bring it.
Demo use.
You meant to do that.
Yeah, that was it's a statement on something. Customization is a big part of the game. Customization is a big part of the game. Save, close. So apart from just customizing your little emblem, you also have full customization over your unit's armor, weapons, all that kind of stuff, and the items they carry. Currently, there's only a couple different actual baseline units you can drive, and like 6 different weapons. But I'm already out of things to say. Really simple click and drag interface for customization. Same thing for items.
What did you build it on?
Yes.
That's the underlying.
I was going to ask.
Okay.
Oh yeah, really easy. Game Maker Studio Pro. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. I don't know how much you guys actually
No,
do
never heard of
game
it.
stuff. Not at all.
What version?
This is using Studio 2. This is actually my first thing I've built in Studio 2. I worked with the original Studio for a long time, and I refused to upgrade until a lovely external IDE for it came out and made the code actually usable.
Okay.
As the built-in one is basically the worst thing ever. It's a really good engine for people who are new or want to get into game development, or who are experienced coders but don't really know how to actually start to build interactive, sort of aggressively interactive software.
What does the 423 gigabytes of data refer to?
Yes, that's actually so one of the many sort of systems. The way I usually design stuff is I shotgun out a bunch of ideas at the beginning, and as I realize they're awful or don't work well, I cut them all down. One of the ideas that we have at the moment, I can actually demonstrate here somewhat well. Not only do we have instance missions and variable maps here, but when we run them, which does have a load time, unfortunately, as I'm not that good of a programmer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's been long enough now that I think I'm just happy with being not that great. So at the moment, it's a pretty sparse environment. I'm missing a lot of the sort of graphical details that'll make it look nice. But as you can see here, it's sort of a little truck thingy. Rotates around. It's got some guns on top. But the gigabytes refer specifically to part of the sort of meta game of the actual game is collecting data on your enemies. So we have these sort of posts around that when you get close to them, they start to download. And there's some little effects here, ooh, you know how data is just ones and zeros that are floating through the air magically somehow. They're all green, of course, because the Matrix.
Back in the Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So the idea is that all the enemies you fight are being remotely controlled from somewhere else. Basically, because it's hard to keep it upbeat. We're the good guys when you're slaughtering hundreds of people. So it's easier if you're slaughtering remotely controlled drones.
Slaughtered a couple.
We can slaughter some, though this is going to look pretty bad at that point. Let's find some that'll make me look good. So there's currently only a couple different types of enemies. This one right here is called the Scaver. It's real basic, little sort of insect scavenger drone that when you get close and trigger it, it does a little "I'm awake" yell, and it just starts chasing you. Really easy to break. Sort of a couple shots, goes poof, easy peasy. This is a Werbish, which is a gibberish word that I thought sounded funny at 3 a.m, and it's still in there for some ungodly reason. Slightly similar thing, it'll follow you much slower and just shoot some little projectiles after you. I really like projectile-based combat just because I feel like it gives you a fair chance to avoid damage coming in. Unlike something like Call of Duty or like the Battlefield games. I guess Battlefield's a bad example, but where bullets are instant, and as soon as they've been shot, they're already at you. I just feel like that leads to a lot of people sitting behind, cover and not actually engaging with the game. So yeah, collect data, you shoot the bad guys.
And is there a end, like, yay, I found the headquarters and
So
the good guys win?
eventually, yes. At the moment, no.
Okay.
So I'm actually
Right now
gonna
it's
die
just
real quick
shoot
here.
bad things and collect data.
Yeah, so right now you are essentially, all your missions are just running interference. You're just trying to disrupt operations as much as possible. There is a sort of plotted structure that myself and the other person developing with me are working on, though none of it's actually in yet. There's sort of a step-by-step progression. You're gonna escalate your attacks until there's a big final attack, and drama and betrayal and
Well,
horror
hopefully,
and
yay,
sadness.
we won.
And then we win! Yay! Awesome. Unfortunately, I'm gonna explode before I finish this mission, so I'm just gonna pull out here.
So this reminds me of, I used to work at Atari. This is like an 8-bit game, it's like with very square things. And,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that's what it reminds me of. And jerk.
So that's definitely part of the like kind of look of it's a lot on my screen. It's a lot smoother, I promise. It looks very
Oh, okay.
jagged on that thing. I know it's going out and back like 4 times, but so yeah, it's a thing. I have run out of things to say, but I do need to show off my other thing that I really like, which is essentially a unique graphics generation system. Unique is the best word I can use because it's not really any better than any other system on the market, and it's probably actually technically much worse. But see, this is all the vehicles in the game are 3D models that have been made in a voxel art editor, chunked up into individual sprites, and then drawn out, layered, and just offset. So instead of having an actual 3D file that's in here that needs to be computed needs to be like drawn by the computer in complex ways, it's a really simple, draws a bunch of layers really quick, rather than drawing an actual 3D model. It's technically worse. Like I can't pick this up and rotate it, towards the camera or anything. It has to stay at this sort of 3/4 angle. But I find, again, personally, and this is sort of connecting back to Armored Core and sort of early PS1 graphics, that it gives it a good, kind of crunchy, like a crunchy low poly sort of look to it. I call it faux poly because wordplay, I guess. But yeah, that's what I've used in my last title. I used it, and here I'm using it again to sort of call back to the PS1 graphics that I love so much.
Yeah,
in my
well,
childhood.
it works. I mean, you could tell what it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Especially here, the last title was trying to make organic things like caribou and wolves and people. Didn't work so great. They kind of looked like chunky robots. I think it looked cool, but it didn't. It wasn't playing to its strengths. Whereas here, lots of vehicles, buildings.
Yeah,
You're saying that that's not a 3D model?
It is not.
it's
So
not. It's
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So
Which is-
it was a 3D model. Exported each layer. This time I didn't do it individually. On the last project, I literally copy pasted. I'd cut out all the layers other than one I wanted, save it as a PNG, paste all the layers back in, cut the next one. This one I can just click a button, it exports them all as layers, and then the engine actually basically just every frame it renders, it starts at 0. It draws the first layer of the sprite, and then increments with a little while loop going up, and then it makes that.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's all the interesting things I have to say about that at the moment. Even if any of that was interesting.
No,
It was. That's great.
Good, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks
yeah.
for sharing, and thanks for
Welcome
sharing.
to Anchorage,
Cool.
Wyatt.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna go up a panic attack corner now.
Well, wait,
Now, you're already
good
done.
God.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That's Jason's
Now it's Jason's turn.
Good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so what do we want to do with the computer situation?
Can you just connect on Zoom and hit share?
Oh.
I sent you a link on Slack.
Okay.
yeah. So next up is going to be Jason, and you're presenting too. Or?
No, I told Jason he had to do
Okay.
it.
It's Jason. He's going to be presenting on Cyclify. His indoor cycling is a real game.
Yeah.
Hey, if they can
And
have
that's,
goat-
Jeff
if they
gave me
can
that
have
text.
goat
So if you have a
yoga,
problem, that was
they can have that.
Said Jeff gave me that description, so that was his.
Damn.
So while waiting, were there any questions from Fairbanks or Juno for Wyatt?
Oh yeah.
Door bike.
Really on the chips, like,
No, yeah.
No. Looks like Juno's down to 2.
we still have 3.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have a question from Fairbanks. How long did it take to develop your game?
Those people.
Someone had a question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from Fairbanks.
Yeah.
How long did it
Go
take
ahead.
to develop your game?
This one that I'm currently working on, or like in general, I've done about 1 billion at this point.
The most recent one and maybe an average of your past games.
Yeah, so my most recent release was about 1.5 years ish. They average out to about 9 months to a year. I tend to do a short one that's like 2 or 3 months, and then a long one that's like a year or so. And they somehow end up to come out every year, basically. I have something that I've released. So, yeah, like 9 to 12 months, generally. Cool.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Anyone else?
Yeah. Do your games, are they usually in this genre, or do you like try other stuff too?
Yes and no. Yeah. So most of the sort of major ones I've made have been kind of like the top-down shootery. Did a roguelike, did sort of a linear story thing, like a Doom-esque, old-school kind of top-down shooter. Not Doom-esque, obviously, 'cause it's not first person, but yeah, like a Robotron kind of thing almost.
Okay.
Though I've done a couple like endless runners and some like just weird experiment things that didn't really work out. So half yes and half just random, like whatever sounded good at the time. So
And where are they released to?
I usually say
Can
the
I
internet.
go and buy
Yeah.
it?
So I have a website. Of course, everyone should go to it and bookmark it, and it should be your new homepage. That's not true. Don't do that. But all my mobile things are on Google Play, Android, mostly. I did an iOS thing, didn't work out very well. I don't particularly love the iOS platform. But my 2 most recent games are on Steam, and then I have a couple on Play Store. And everything else on itch.io, because it's a good place to put weird stuff.
Do you actually make like substantial money with your games?
No, I don't. No, actually, this last year is the first time I've had to claim it on taxes, which I just filed last week. But a couple bucks, nothing even close to what you could live on, even at super low cost of living. So it's more of a side hobby that I'd love to sort of work into a full thing, but at this point, again, like it's not pulling in enough money. So yeah.
You ready, Jason?
I think so. Yeah, I'm gonna try and share the screen, see what happens. I thought I was at the share screen, good to go, but not quite. 1 second. Sure. Sweet. It's funny. That's a
Zoom watching Zoom.
yeah, and it's a 4:3 perspective on a 16:9 screen at like 2 frames a second. Anyways, that'll work. Yeah. So thing I'm going to talk about is called Cycle Fi is what we're naming it. Originally was named. I made a game with biking in it after the classic I Made Against Zombies in it. If you ever heard of that. Yeah, so Jeff came to me, like about a month and a half ago or something like that. Jeff's really avid cycler. And so there's a product called Zwift, which I'd never heard of, but basically you can buy a bike trainer that you have in your home, attach your bike to it, the rear wheel kind of latches into it. You start biking along and it outputs data for your wattage and your speed. And you can also, some of them, you can set the resistance and stuff like that. And so people have been using health apps with this for a while, and then Zwift came along, and since it's Bluetooth and a protocol called ANT, Zwift came along and said, hey, we can build not a game, but a simulation around this. And so if you use Zwift, you can actually see your avatar biking in front of you. So it's basically a good like winter alternative to biking outdoors, but it's pretty neat. But it's not. Basically, our idea was, can we make it more engaging, more interesting? Can you gamify it? To use that overused phrase. So so we started kind of hacking with it, and had to kind of get through a few things, but there was kind of some of the data standards type stuff. So let me I can actually show what it is real quick. That'll be a little more concrete. So here, let's do this video. If I can stretch it, probably not. No. Okay, Mark, this is Mark at the boardroom. He's gotten very skinny on this ratio. But anyways, you can kind of see we have this set up as a demo, and so we have one person on the bike that can move back and forth, and then the screen up there is the video game itself, and you have this kind of Tron type bike that you move back and forth. The one addition we made over the Zwift formula is that we have a phone on top of the bike that's linked over Wi-Fi to transmit the gyrotometer rotation of the device itself, and so you can use that to kind of figure out, are you rotating left or rotating right, etc. We do one more video.
You mean like if you actually move the handlebars?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Which worked okay. If you twisted too far, you kind of lean a bit, and so it felt a little dicey. But overall, it worked pretty well. At the boardroom, there was quite a bit of latency in the Wi-Fi because distributed area network, and so it's like almost like half a second. At a home Wi-Fi, I don't think it'd be as much of a problem.
Did you just pull it works on my machine there?
What's that?
Did you just pull it works on my machine?
Yeah, it works at home on my machine under ideal circumstances. Yeah, fantastic.
So, I noticed, is this a good time for questions, or should we?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So in the first video, it's sort of like a binary, is that left or right? Does it have sort of the continuum of control, or is it only like you're turning left, you're turning right kind of thing?
Yeah, let me.
I could just be like looking at that wrong.
Yeah, these are maybe not ideal pictures. Here is a screenshot, which might help a little bit to kind of describe the components. So you can see here, the bike is set up. You can rotate it on this thing, which is just kind of a pad. You can go left and right. It's hard to tell. There's a phone there, which is sending the gyrotometer position to the laptop, which is a small little gaming PC over here. Of course, attached HDMI to the screen, and also the bike trainer itself, which you can't quite see, but it's back there. That transmits the your rotation and all that. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, yeah. It just in the like 2 seconds of footage that we see of the screen, it looks like it's just flipping sort of very quickly from one side to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like is the game computing that as like two paths kind of thing, or is it just that it's turning so quickly that it's not
Yeah, let me show the game itself.
Is it like Battletoads? Is it up and down on that one level?
Well, isn't it?
Yeah,
you're
sort of like
just going forward, and you could shoot the bad guys or whatever.
Yeah, we kept it
as fast as you're pedaling.
Right, not even shooting. You're just kind of actually trying to move left and right. We kept it pretty simple for the sake of the demo. This was literally about like 25 hours of effort each. I mean, everything we're kind of like, what would be ideal to build, and what hacked together terrible version of that can we do in 15 minutes? And then we move on next idea. So it really was just a really huge pile of very hacked together code and everything kind of thrown in skybox and stuff. But
and then you become Aura.
yeah. Hopefully. Whoop, nope, not gonna do that. There's music. I don't think it'll work for me to play it. But anyway, so this is the game itself. Frame rate's gonna be kind of low there, but the idea is actually guessing.
So you avoid those things.
Okay, so you're either trying to pick up or avoid those?
Yeah, you collect them.
Oh, collect.
But I mean, can you move to the middle between, or is it
Yeah,
only on the
that's
left
kind of
path,
like
only on the right path? Is what he's asking.
I'm trying to get it like with the constraints of your guys' like.
Yeah, it looks like you're either.
It looks like you're on the left side or you're on the right side. You can't be in the middle.
Yeah, it's fixed by lane at the moment.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because it'd be hard to try to like I almost in the lane.
And that's not like I'm not trying
So
to
that
dig
makes
it or
more
anything.
sense.
It's just
We'll see. I think there actually might be some potential there to have more precision, but just for this prototype, we're
like
thinking
a
that's probably.
difficulty setting kind of thing almost like. to kind of like have to stay in the middle, or rather than just turning left or right, like kind of
Yeah.
that fine control when you're going.
Yeah, exactly. We need to do a lot more kind of testing with it. When it comes to input, you definitely want to have like a really good balance between what input's expected and what you can actually do with the gameplay mechanics in the game, right? And so if there's like a lot of latency, which is really hard to control, then you don't want to require anything with too fine a precision,
Right.
because that's going to get frustrating and irritating to play. But we found that this is literally like, are you left of 0 degrees or right of 0 degrees, and just kind of moves for you. But there actually is, it'd take a while to set up, but the precision of the gyrotometer to the computer is pretty accurate and can be pretty fast over Wi-Fi. So I think there's some potential there for more precision.
Sure.
One of the fun things about building this, there's two things from my perspective. One is that I've never built a game before, and so working with Jason, who's been doing Unity for a decade now, was like super fun, because I got to sort of sit back and pitch my ideas and go back and forth, and that was really what allowed us to do those like 15 minutes, like what is the bare bones concept that we're trying to prove, right? So the first sort of major concept was this idea of immersion. And so the first thing that we did was actually try to get the power meter in the smart trainer connected to Unity and pulling data. And this is really funny because that was probably the single feature that took us the longest. Our first meeting, we spent 3 hours just trying to get a hold of the documentation for the Ant Plus protocol. And then the second meeting, we actually got in and like started collecting data. But then it was like, all right, now how do we turn left and right? And what if we built a bike? And what if you put like a block in the way? And there were all these really funny concepts that like, when you get the 15-minute version of it out into the wild, you realize like as soon as you see it, like this doesn't make any sense. So one of the first things that we did was we had blocks that you were supposed to avoid. Well, here's the thing. If the game is based on riding a bicycle, it's almost always more fun to ride fast, and you're going to be getting a better workout if you're riding fast. But if you're riding fast, you have a disincentive because you're trying to avoid obstacles. So that was like a really funny one where we went from like avoiding obstacles to picking up obstacles.
You guys can make multiple levels. You can have one where it's like a runner and like the thing's behind you chasing you, and if you slow down, it's going to hit you.
Right.
Oh, that's what I said. This reminds me, like right now, this reminds me of like Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm waiting for like a loop to come in.
I was thinking about like on the phone, there's like the, what is that game called?
Oh.
Temple Run?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So that was actually, Jason pulled that up. I had never seen it. And so that was like one of our inspirations. We've been playing with a handful. And so it was like Tron meets Temple Run meets
You
like,
can have like different levels they could pick. And
Yeah.
picking the one where you're trying to get the
Yep.
gems or whatever those were.
And actually, a lot of mobile games are great inspiration because there's so many limitations on your input, right? You're biking pretty hard, so you're not actually able to do fine control. So mobile games are great for that. So it's a really simple, basic concept we can kind of throw onto this bike. And that's actually our next phase is going to be to experiment with other concepts that are actually not even biking at all. Like, could you play a kind of left-right shooter? Could you play something that's like a Flappy Bird, where you're kind of trying to elevate your character through a level set? Could you play like all these sort of things, right? What is fun when you have basically your main input is how hard you're biking and are you rotating left or right, and maybe a button press on the screen. We still need to kind of play around with that a little bit if it's actually fun to enjoyable at all to release the handles, tap the screen that's on there, and kind of go back. That's kind of to be determined.
You had it somewhere on the handle or something.
Yeah,
You know, like
that'd
how
be
you
cool.
change gears or something, something.
Yeah, I think that would be most ideal. I don't know, the hardware connection there can be kind of complicated.
Oh, true.
Ideally, we want to.
Like little joystick type.
Yeah, if we're doing custom hardware, absolutely, that'd be fantastic to be able to do to set brakes and gear changes and all that. Which maybe, I don't know.
cool. Yeah. One of the other things, so our first major core concept was like if we could get people to stop thinking about cycling. Did I send you the video with Catherine?
Yeah, I think that was one of them.
Yeah. So this is really funny. This video, when we had people trying it out at the boardroom, one of the other effects that happens that you can't hear because we don't have audio is that we cut out different frequencies of the music that's playing in the background. So when you're first starting, if you're not putting out very much power into the bike or you're not spinning very fast, it sounds like tinny, like the radio. But the faster you ride, it brings in the bass, and then it also speeds up as you're riding. So it gives us this like sort of all-encompassing feeling, right? And when you're sprinting, it like speeds up the track at the same time. So what was really fun about this was that, you know, we put as little time as we could into most of these concepts, and then we wanted to get it into everybody's hands really quickly and then see what happened. So like we didn't even have a scoreboard. We just pulled over like a little whiteboard and we were like writing people's scores and what they got on the game. And that was really funny because what we noticed, was that our scoring was completely wrong, which was like
Totally broken.
it was totally broken, and I'll explain why in just a second. But the other thing is people were so focused on the mechanics of the game, right? The fact that you had to ride the bike, that you had to steer left and right, and then the immersion of bringing in the music, that they were not paying attention at all to pacing. And so within like 2 minutes, everybody was just like panting and like hit the end of a round. And it was also this sort of thing where like Jason and I were trying to figure out like, okay, we've got all these elements, like how do we wrap it into an experience? And so like the minimum experience that we could create, like that was just like a high score with a fake high scoreboard that we were writing with expo markers, was about 2 minutes. And that was like plenty. So it was really fun because like we put not very much time in, and we were mostly doing like pair programming, but at the same time we were able to kind of get the minimum concept and then get it in people's hands and see what the response was, which was that nobody was thinking about the exercise component, but everybody was working pretty hard. Now where that gets really funny for the scoring was that the faster you're riding when you hit the rings, the more points you get. Except for the points that you're getting as you're riding are based on time. So if you're riding slowly, you're riding for more time, therefore you get more points. So our high scoreboard was completely wrong. And we realized it at the last rider as it was like petering out that like the person with the higher score was actually riding slower than anybody else.
Right. Yeah, it overly kind of rewarded pacing. Like, so if you pace yourself perfectly to trying to get under the gate that closes right before it closed, then that's going to maximize your time on the track, which maximizes the points. So least effort, most points, which seems like a bad correlation.
So the game was a fixed distance, basically.
Basically.
You rode fast, you were done quicker.
Yeah, we set up a way to be able to really quickly edit the level files. Basically, it's a matter of how much distance there is between the checkpoint, the gates that close, and how long you have between them, or how long they close. And so, but by the end of it, though, we had it like you had to go like 500 meters in 2 seconds, which was impossible. So at that point, it's effectively the end of the level.
Huh.
So there ended up being, we didn't spend as much time as we could have on tuning. So there ended up being one particular gate, which I think like 90% of the people died on, just because it suddenly became too hard too quickly.
Right.
Exploded.
Right.
Cool. Fairbanks, Gino, you guys have any questions?
No questions in Juneau.
Okay. Well, if that's all of the questions here, I think we're gonna kick it over to Arsh and Fairbanks to talk about building Flask web apps. Assuming you still there?
Did you say Flask? Yeah.
Let me just set up the screen and then I will get.
That sounds like some sort of a liquid container.
All right. Well.
Hey Arsh, could you make a point in talking a little bit louder? We're having a hard time here in Fairbanks.
Is this better?
Not really.
Okay, I can.
Oh wait, we can turn our volume up more.
Right.
Try now, Arsh.
What about now, Juno?
Yeah.
We can hear you in Juneau.
Awesome.
Okay, we got you.
Yep.
Sweet, but I can go louder. Actually, do this. Here, that'll be better. Alright, so that's my screen.
All right. So, for those of you who don't know, there was ArcticCon was yesterday. So Adeline and I, we built this web app, and its idea was at ArcticCon you can sort of build your own badges, modify them however you wanna. So we had this idea of let's have a contest, have people submit ideas, like once they build the badge, and then let people vote. So right now, what's on the screen? You want to explain what's on the screen?
Yeah, so we've got a description, how to vote, a notice for people to make bug reports. No one did, but we think they did encounter bugs. We've got countdown for submission deadlines. Once that deadline goes down to 0, it switches over to a countdown for voting. And then after the voting deadline passes, then it would display the winners. For people to, the authentication is the same for whether you're entering or voting. You can type in your first last name or scan your QR 2-bit code.
So,
give a testimony.
I was just so once you pick your entry, all of the entries show up here. These are actual badges from yesterday, and then let's me testing. So if you want to submit, basically, let's see if this works. Who should I use? I'm going to use a friend. All right, so I just authenticated as Bradley. I'm going to allow the camera, he has this awesome badge. You capture, shows you where it got, and you submit it, and you get this awesome feedback, which is, the string.
You can also press capture as many times as you want to get your picture just right.
Yeah, and then if you see, right, there's a new one. All right, so if you want to go vote, let's see if I can do this. It's going myself. Anyways, if you want to explain the voting system. Yeah, but yeah, basically you can choose badges, and yeah, that's basically it. It's built in Flask. Admin is going to try to sign in as an admin, maybe. So the times are based on a config that can be set by an admin, and like almost most of my applications, the admin actually has a password. I've built Flask apps where the admin is just ignored.
What's backend?
It's Flask, so it's a Python. Yeah, it's running Flask and SQLite as the database. The front end, that's our part.
So the front end is foundation by Zerb, and Teeny Tiny built a little bit of Font Awesome.
And yeah, it's just Jinja. So that's the admin side. It's super flushed out. You have to put in all the things that you make the application. Yeah. Yeah. You have to put in all the fields if you want to change one, because if you don't put it in, it tries to set something to none, and it doesn't like that. But yeah, I think the cool what we built it. I worked on this like 20 hours straight on Tuesday, so we built it. Yeah, one day. But yeah, any questions?
Did you write any tests?
No. No. It was built in 20 hours, and then at 3 a.m. in the morning before KickOn, we realized our vote counting system was wrong. So there's a fun conversation of how the voting may not work. No test.
Did you end up setting up a full database server like Postgres or anything, or are you just running in SQLite?
It's just in SQLite. It's super alpha right now.
Something's gonna happen in 2 minutes. So.
And so for the voting, we decided that people would have a maximum of 3 votes. You can just click whichever ones you want, you can unclick, and click another one, change your vote. But once you click submit, you can't change it after that.
Yeah, that's it.
So how are you stopping more than 3 votes from the same login?
The question was, how do we stop more than 3 votes? There's a backend check.
Yeah, the front end also doesn't allow you to click more than 3. It does, but not well. Something we found out at the con. Our expectation was that there'd be a laptop set up for this, but there ended up not being one. And from that, we ended up finding out a couple of different things that were wrong with the way that it captured images. So when you click capture, since it's drawn with the canvas, depending on the camera, the image is going to be squished one direction or the other. And also, for whatever reason, it doesn't ask which camera you want to use, and it seems to default to the selfie cam, which is kind of a problem.
That's your badge, you look at your face.
I mean, it looks like people want to take pictures of the badge while they're wearing it, but not so much if they want to angle the camera above it.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, final questions. I think we are out of time.
Any other questions from anybody? Anchorage, Juno?
All right, thanks, Arsh.
Yeah, thanks, Arsh.
And Adeline.
And I think next from our side is going to be Jeremy here in Anchorage talking about modding Minecraft.
Give us just a second to get set up here.
Well, you come prepared.
Straight up. Yeah. So.
I do it on an iPad. Like his world is the tab, and then I do it locally for the Wi-Fi.
Or content on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and Sean teaches me everything like that.
Can you plug in that? Is that?
Yep. Yeah.
Like Prime has all these clips that they different ones.
Like,
Oh, wow. It's fast.
I can watch those.
This might be the worst cable in the history of cables.
yeah, it's worse than you do it, or then you do everything on.
Yeah.
Well, there. So
It's all the content on top.
I feel like there should be a way to just mute the content audio.
I don't know.
I would think so. But
What? Try that and then hit mute.
no, it does. It just doesn't fix that problem.
Can you hop on the Zoom feed?
Yeah.
It's probably
Doesn't seem like it likes connection.
You know what it is? I bet because the screws aren't there, it's not grounded to anything.
Maybe. Why don't you do yours then?
What's that?
Why don't you do yours since you're already on Zoom?
He's gonna do his last thing. Yeah, let's take it.
Yeah.
What's the Zoom?
I sent you a link on Slack. Do you have it on here? Sorry guys, 1 second. We're having some
It is also
technical difficulties.
Any service in here? Myself, I don't have any service.
okay.
Your EQ
Yeah.
low, but
You can do it just without audio.
I must be low because I suddenly got a flush text message. So my
Okay. Everybody seeing the screen?
Not in Juno.
I must have shared just the application.
Oh.
Maybe it doesn't like it because it's in screen mode.
Maybe.
Let's change it to off screen.
Yeah, that was what it was.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I've kind of been goofing around with making a mod in Minecraft, and the beautiful thing is that there's a lot of people that are way smarter than me that have already done all of the hard work. So what they've done is they have taken the Minecraft source code every time that there's a release, and they have tools they've written that will decompile that into the source Java code, and then afterwards somebody else has a project where they have painstakingly looked at every single obfuscated method name like function 1, 2, 3, 4, and they've made real names for each one, like add music or add block. And so with those things combined, there's a modding community called Forge, and you can make mods. This one is called Vampiric. The idea is to add vampires and werewolves and mummies to the game. So I'm showing you right now some things that are added to the game. So you've got garlic growing right here. And you can harvest the garlic, you can eat the garlic as a food. There's silver ore that's added. Wow, the refresh rate across the screen sucks. I promise you, my computer can play Minecraft. So the ore will generate within the world with certain depth specifications. There's of course a silver block, and then there's silver tools and silver armor. I made a vampire bat, not the actual enemy, but just like the same as a regular bat, but with red, and it will actually attack, and it also is vulnerable to sunlight and to garlic. So that's why I've got a roof on this glass house so that it doesn't die out here. I'm just going to spawn one. You should see it start burning.
Oh, wow.
Wow, the refresh rate is so horrible. All right, so here's a bunch of cows, and I have a splash potion of garlic essence. Won't do anything to the cows because they're not a vampire. But if I set it to nighttime, and then I spawn, well, a little bit further away because the vampire will actually go after the cattle. So now he's got, no, you can't see anything. It's horrible. Okay, well, let me see if I can, I'll spawn one over here.
But if the cattle have garlic on them, wouldn't that kill the vampire? Or the vampire won't get the
So
cattle?
I put a splash potion down of garlic essence. Now the vampire has got garlic essence on it, and it's taking 1 damage every tick. What else is in it? Oh, So if I set it back today, all those vampires are going to start burning. And they also will try to hide, so if I put one here, he's going to run towards cover underneath that tree.
Nice.
I also added a wooden stake, but the graphic kind of sucks. And when you add a potion, it will automatically add the regular potion, the splash potion, the lingering potion, and it will add a arrow for that same potion automatically for you. And then I added one more tidbit while I was sitting here listening to the cool presentations. I did it just for you guys. I added another block.
Nice.
The Cody block?
Called the Alaska Dev Alliance block. And so to do that, just as a quick example, you have to declare a place to store the block. There's the dev block. After you do that, you have to tell it how to create the block. So here's the section of code that creates a block. And then you have to tell it to create the item for the block that you can have in your inventory. And that's this single line of code here. So all of that will create it, but it will have a missing texture, which is purple and black. So then you have to add in the English or other language definition for what that block is, which I put AK Dev Alliance. And then here is where you have JSON files that define where the textures are located and what the textures are and what shape that object is. Here's for the item itself. And here's the actual texture.
Nice.
And that's it.
Super cool.
Nice.
How long have you been modding Minecraft?
Well, I started working on this mod last year, and then I got bored. And then they upgraded it to 1.15.2, and then Forge finally caught up to that version because Forge kind of lags behind because they have to do all that deobfuscation and they have to do the mappings. So they finally caught up on a stable version. So I've actually been recently converting all of my stuff from 1.12 to 1.15, which they changed so much functionality on how you code things. And then I added the vampire bat yesterday, actually, because I wanted to have something more to present than just blocks and items.
Garlic.
What are your plans for it going forward?
I'm going to keep adding to it. I had a friend, he sat down with me and he brainstormed a bunch of stuff. He's the one that said, well, let's add in, besides just vampires, let's add in werewolves. And then also you should add in mummies. And then with those three, you can get pieces from each one and you can make like a vampire clay mixture and then clay mixture from the mummy and clay mixture from the werewolf. And you can combine them together and make like a clay golem that you could summon. It would be your pet or whatever. So we have a bunch of items and things that we put on a wiki page on GitHub, and all of this is on GitHub. Like my code is not that amazing, so I have nothing to hide or be secretive about. Anybody can access this. There's tons of projects out there. There's tons of mods that already exist, and they have all of their code on GitHub too. So there's lots of reference material.
Nice.
What are the limitations for assets that you can put into the game engine? Like, can you use like FBX 3D models, or can you only do textures? Or
so for custom models, there is a JSON format that you need to use.
Okay.
But and generally they want you to use blocks for that. But there are people who have added custom models. But so basically, once it's decompiled, you can do anything you want. Mm-hmm. So you could load up, I don't know, like the Millennium Falcon, and you could put it in the game, but it would look kind of odd to have Millennium Falcon and then blocks everywhere else.
Right.
But you can do that. There are people that have made custom block models that are a lot more detailed and have triangles instead of just squares.
Okay, cool.
I don't know how to do it, but you can do it.
might be a dumb question, but is this only for the Java version, or does this also work with Bedrock?
The Forge Minecraft modding community is only for the Java version. Yeah, you can. Okay, so if you have the other versions, you can do. What are they called? What are those like? The packs that you can change the looks of it.
I know they have like packs and stuff in there, but
so with the packs that have the skins, all that stuff, you can change all the blocks in the game to anything you want. You just can't add new blocks.
Oh, sure.
So if you wanted to make a custom block look like something, you have to kind of
you only like reskin it, right? You can't actually.
you have to sacrifice like another block
Sure.
that is going to look like something else now. So if you go to the Nether, all those blocks will look like pink bunnies or something. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Fairbanks, Juno, do you guys have any questions?
Oh, that was really cool.
You're getting a thumbs up here. I don't know if the camera's on now, too. So, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Any other questions here? All right. Well, if that's it, then we're going to move on to our last presenter of the night, which is Jeff. He's going to talk a bit about the future of the AK Dev Alliance. Yeah. The Yeti mascot. His name's Cody.
Cody. Okay. I didn't know. I grabbed it like 10 minutes
I didn't know that
ago.
either, and then when I found it out, that was like, I'm like, wow, that's genius.
Oh, it's code.
Good.
Yeah, that's.
I don't think it was.
It's a good one.
I was like,
You should
Yeah.
put that PNG on the Slack chain.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like to.
Pixelated one.
I'd like to steal that.
Okay.
Put that in something too.
I mean, it's your guys' artwork. I just used it.
it is like the coolest logo I've seen of any like group. The Yeti with a hat.
Listed on the site anywhere. So,
You got it, Jeff? Or?
Yeah, I had to quit and rejoin.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to go over this briefly. I've actually got about 40 slides here, but I'm not going to subject everybody to that tonight. But what I wanted to talk a bit about is sort of like where we've come in the last year, a little bit about like what's happening and where we're headed with the leadership retreat that just happened this past January, and then kind of our major direction for the year. At some point, we will do a more in-depth version. What's that?
Can you hear us?
Audio and Juno. You just have a spotty connection.
Okay.
1 second here.
Just carry on.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, it's on our end. Go ahead and keep presenting.
Okay, so anyways, yeah, we'll do a more in-depth version, but really we're sort of compiling all this data, and then also we did our big developer survey in 2019, and so we're kind of just looking at what's changed over the last year since we started the Alliance in 2018. So just like some big talking points and like what's happened in 2019. So we wrote the white paper, we expanded to Juno and Fairbanks. We ended up with, we 3x'd in size. We went from 100 people to 300 people. We had 10 meetups, 1 boot camp, 1 hackathon. Our hackathon had 71 participants, which was super fun. Wow. Yeah, we filled rooms. Most of those were UAF students, which was really cool to see. And then we secured $60,000 in funding for the next 5 years, well, 4 years now. And then also we formed an official board. So we went from, buying pizza in a room to like a real governing body, which has been pretty cool. And this is important because unless we do these things and we have more people participate and kind of put their own spin and flavor on things, then it will always be like one person's baby. And unfortunately, it won't survive secession. And so that was really one of the core goals of building the Alaska Developers Alliance from day one, was that we want to make it sustainable. We want to have an overarching organization that's going to live and not die when, somebody's life gets busy. And so we're doing a great job doing that. We have, as I said, we've got like 10 people on the board now. And so we're getting a lot of great input, and I'll dive into a little bit more on that in just a second. So yeah, we can just look at some basic Slack statistics. I grabbed this just from our hackathon in 2019, just because it did a really good job of kind of illustrating our growth over time, which was, from October 24th, 2017 to July 2018, this Slack channel was actually the Fairbanks developer group. And then when we joined forces with them, we changed it to be the Dev Alliance, and then had a big spike, and we've seen steady growth there. So that's pretty cool. And then just, our all-time messaging over the last year has kind of followed that same trend. We had a massive boom going into October. And then of course it slows down a little bit more for the holidays. So moving forward onto the developer survey, just some totals. So we had 113 people respond out of about 300 at the time that we closed the survey. So that was 37%, which is not bad. Our open rate for our monthly newsletter is about 45 to 50%, but not all of those people are programmers. So we do have a blend of people who participate in Slack, but don't follow, but don't subscribe to the mailing list. But that's been pretty cool, because a lot of people outside of the Developers Alliance find out what we're doing because of the mailing list, but most of our participants are engaging with us via Slack. So that kind of explains that split there. So some of our like big kind of questions that we're trying to ask and understand more of are, what's the job market like in Alaska? And I think some of us know this more than others, but it's not great. The ones that exist tend to be less interesting. But as I'll get into in just a minute, some of this comes down to our core demographic that's represented within the Developers Alliance. And that was actually fascinating. So I'm going to keep going in the survey, and then I'll get into reasons why this survey is maybe not as accurate as it could be in the near future. So the next thing is who our typical Alaska Developer Alliance member is. They live in Anchorage. They have an undergrad degree. They're currently employed as a lead or senior engineer for an Alaskan company. They got into programming because it's challenging and fun. They use JavaScript or Python. That one was absolutely surprising for me. They've been to less than 5 meetings and are interested in participating more, and they do not have kids. This is fascinating to me, because more of the people who took this survey are not participating in our group in person than the people who are actually showing up. And so I had like a pretty good idea of, who are the people who are showing up, who makes up the majority of that 300, but the majority of our participants of that survey are not falling into that demographic. So that's pretty interesting. And when I say the majority of these people, right, obviously we have a large constituency of students and professionals, but there's sort of a duality of like who's showing up and participating in person versus participating in general in other ways, whether that's Slack or following along on the mailing list. So the other big thing was, how are we doing overall? And that was pretty cool, because we got generally positive remarks, and we also asked about, what are some things that we could do better. So better at communication and expanding our reach to beginners, kids, non-programmer audiences, and I'll dive more into that in a second. But also, it's been interesting how quickly the community has grown, because a lot of people didn't believe that there were that many programmers in Alaska. And so overall, we're doing a good job, but we could definitely improve. So I'm going to skip pretty quickly through some of these other bullet points. Most people have been to 1 to 5 meetings. It seems like the people who are really participating are fairly devoted, right? The ones who we're seeing at most of the meetups is actually only about 13%, which is kind of surprising. And then a handful of us have been to all of them. So probably about 15% of people are going regularly. 30% have not been at all, which is, again, kind of falls in line with the surprising demographics that we're seeing. The majority of people are attending meetups as opposed to anything else, but a decent chunk of those people could probably be explained by students who joined in the hackathon or people who went to the Golang bootcamp. So are you currently employed as a programmer? We're seeing some of these statistics change from 2018. So unemployed is up 3%, but employed is also up 1.3%, which is kind of an interesting statistic. But because of the way we broke this up, my understanding is that people are shifting from self-identifying as a hobbyist to identifying as a professional. And so more people of this total pie are looking for employment in some fashion. And so that's why we're seeing some of these numbers change. Do you work for an Alaskan company? We actually dropped 5% for employed locally. And my hunch here is that we've acquired like a lot more remote developers who are coming from more vibrant, engaged ecosystems who are like coming to Alaska, moving here for family or other reasons, and then getting engaged in the Developers Alliance. And that's one of the shifts. This question in 2018, I think we had maybe 50 responses. And I would need to double check on how many we got, but you know, how many?
It says at the top corner, it says 95.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, so we had 95. So we had close to double for this year. But that's pretty interesting because, 30 plus % are working remotely from our community.
So people have recently moved here and gotten programming jobs?
No, so
So I represent that. No, I moved here, I had a job and I moved here. I was remote before and I moved here and then I'm still remote.
But same job?
It was the same job, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's sort of an interesting trend that we're seeing. Our people with job mobility are moving here, and they're looking for local opportunities. But unfortunately, the pay scale and job market, if you have a specialty that's sought after in the lower 48, is really hard to come by here. Most of the jobs tend to be in corporate enterprise, web development in some fashion. And if you specialize in something like graph databases like Dave, there's almost no opportunity for that specialty here,
right?
Which makes things difficult.
Yes.
This was, we probably could have guessed, but the majority of employment, which is about 50%, is telco, oil and gas, university, and government. If you are a programmer, how long did it take you to find your first job? 6 months to a year was up 2.6%. Less than a month is down. This doesn't really surprise me. Anecdotally, talking to people through the community, I've seen a lot more early stage programmers looking for jobs, and it seems like that's a little bit more difficult. But within a year, it's easier to find something. It's just that the hiring process is maybe taking a little bit longer. Some of that could be attributed to the university hiring freeze and other things that we're seeing. 46% of our constituents and people participating would identify as not senior or junior to mid-level, which I think is pretty interesting. I would be curious sort of this pie, how many people are participating at regular meetups. The levels.fyi is an awesome website. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's kind of a good way to rank yourself on where you're at as a programmer. Be aware that imposter syndrome can also play a role in some of this stuff. But that gives you some good guidelines on how to rank yourself as a programmer.
Also, there's 7 apparently Carmack Wozniaks. That's
I should dive into those. I'd be very curious who self-identifies as John Carmack or Woz. Most of our people are in Anchorage and Fairbanks, which is pretty well known and understood. But we are starting to look at what would it look like to create some better, more cohesive engagement. And so, in really small towns, whether that's, say, Valdez or Kodiak, right, could we create a remote chapter that would be better to engage? And with that idea, there's also kind of been this funny inside joke for those people who have been participating with the Developers Alliance for a long time. Conroy Whitney, who I'm going to give a shout out to right now, he's on vacation traveling around the globe. And there was sort of this funny point where he was looking at potentially leaving the state, and I was like, well, am I still part of the Alaska Developers Alliance? And I was making a joke that, well, it's like the Hotel California. Like, you could join the alliance, but you can never leave. So we really want to kind of look into this. You know, what does it look like if we could create a remote chapter and create this as, you know, a community you could participate in regardless of where you are? And I think that's an interesting idea we can explore a little bit further. I already kind of touched on this. Majority of people are programming in JavaScript or Python. I'd be really curious in understanding
JavaScript or Java?
JavaScript. And I'd be really curious in understanding where those people who are primarily programming in Python are located. Like what industry? Are you in oil and gas or telco? Because the state and in general, most like large corporate organizations in Alaska are Java and C#. So, or at least they were as of like 5 years ago. So that would be interesting to kind of bridge that gap and also overlay that on, you know, kind of where people are at and what demographics are fitting into that. So
is that the actual question?
Yes.
Because, okay, point of view, when I read that, that might be my personal choice of my primary programming language, not what I do at work.
So there are two questions. What languages do you use for work is the next one. And sorry, this is a bit small. I don't know if everybody's able to read it, but Java at the top is 18%, C# is 21%, JavaScript is the number one with 53%, and Python is number two with 52%. So yeah, I mean, like to me, these numbers are a bit surprising, you know, and it'd be, again, interesting to kind of, like, we have this all in Excel, so we can do some data mining if anybody wants to step up to the plate and kind of dive into this stuff, so we can figure out, like, okay, are the people who are doing JavaScript and Python, are they part of those 30% that are remote, and then only, you know, 15% of those people are doing it within the state, and then, you know, who are the Java and C# people, and you know, what demographic do they belong to? I think some of that would be worthwhile diving into.
I knew someone at GCI and he used Python.
Really?
That was his primary. Yeah, I mean, he did some other stuff too, but
Oil
Yeah.
and gas is using a lot of Python too.
Yeah. You know, obviously, like most people, most programmers, sorry, not obviously, but most programmers I've met are not satisfied with job opportunities in Alaska. We've known this trend didn't really change from last year. Some interesting things to note, though, are that people who ranked that we were 4s and 5, which is better, or great job opportunities, that actually improved 4%. But the people who said, like, the jobs are okay or the jobs kind of suck, that actually pooled into, you know, they suck less, right? Like a 2 out of 5 increase. So that's a really interesting thing. So it's like people are sort of stuck in, like, doing what they're doing is either okay or it's, you know, slightly better than I'm not stoked on it. But still, we have very few opportunities that people are excited about. In terms of which continuing education people are excited about, this was really surprising to me. Most people were excited for our monthly meetups. We had an increase of like 16% over last year. And so I'd be curious in knowing, like, is that 16% increase because over time we've seen, like, we've had really high quality speakers for our meetups? Or is that sort of just like a who is able to make, you know, the hackathon or the boot camp? So that's pretty interesting and intriguing. And yeah, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. I think another thing I'm going to get into with some of the demographics is, like, who we're actually reaching, because our meetups are, you know, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. So where do you hang out with programmers outside of work? This is a great one. So in 2018, what other programmers, being the response is actually down 8.5%. But at the same time, our AK Developers Alliance events are up 8.2. So that almost accounts for all of it, right? Like, that's pretty cool. So our major takeaways is that we're your best friends.
well, no, we've now met other programmers. It's
like, totally. Yeah, so I'll take that. So So, what would you be most interested in learning at a retreat? This was really interesting. I didn't dive too deeply into this, but what I did see happen was that there were a few that were like off the charts, like up in the 60s and 70s%. And what really happened is none of those top ones really changed that much, but they all flattened out. And so I don't know if that's because the demographics of the group changed, and therefore people are not necessarily like, I gotta go AR, VR, or whatever. But it seems like we're sort of more evenly distributed among those technologies people are already interested in learning. The one that still kind of boggles my mind is that COBOL got 5.6%. And I don't, maybe those people just want to make a ton of money, and I support that. That's super cool. I'm going to skip over the cloud services, but what do you believe is the most important element missing in the developer community? Number one, more jobs. Number two, more community and company participation. Three is stable training and university funding. I think that's pretty similar to what it had last year. What are we doing right? Cultivating community and outreach, interesting events and speakers, leadership consistency and planning. That was awesome to see, because those people in leadership work pretty darn hard to make that happen. So yeah, in general, most people rated 42% said we're doing amazing, 35% said we're doing pretty good, and 22% were neutral. We're just going to assume those are the people who haven't been yet.
Nobody said awful.
Nobody said awful.
And only
Nobody
one
said awful.
said the other one, whatever one.
What's that?
Only one said the number 2.
Yeah, we're just going to assume he was trolling.
Yeah.
So what could we do better? The number one thing was more engagement and better event communication. I think that makes perfect sense. And then expanding the reach beyond developers. Event technical difficulties. So that one is actually totally addressed. That's why we're all at universities now. And this seems to be like pretty great across the board, which is like now we don't have AV issues, and Arsh is absolutely crushing the streaming. So thank you, Arsh. What could make the tech community better in Alaska? Number one thing, more and different job opportunities, and then better community. So we had our first ever leadership retreat in January. We got everybody who's been participating, original founders, people from Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau. We all went up to Fairbanks and we got together for the weekend. And the reason that we did this was that it got to a point where we started this group, and it was just a tight-knit group of us. And we sort of had all these initiatives with the newsletter and the meetups and getting pizza, and then starting to try and bring people in and outreach and talking to students at universities. And we just realized we had a lot of initiatives. And so we started bringing people into the fold and getting more people to participate in leadership. And, once we had funding, we sort of had to solidify some of those roles. But what was essentially happening is that because we hadn't identified what our core sort of vision and goals were for the organization, it was sort of like a really small group of that leadership kind of knew what was going on and what should be done. And other people weren't really empowered. And so, it was like those one or two or three people who knew what was going on were really having to kind of be on every single event, which is exhausting if you're trying to maintain a job and a family or be a student. And so we decided to get everybody together so that we could really flesh those things out. And what you're seeing in this large photo is where we started to really brainstorm and break down these things of why we're doing this and how we're here and what we're actually doing to accomplish those things. And it was fascinating to see all of the different answers that we had from those 10 people who came up for the leadership retreat. But they were pretty vastly different across the board. Everybody had different kind of spins and what they were doing and why they were participating. A lot of it came down to, finding sort of a tribe and a people to group and participate and identify with. And so that was really cool to see that deeper need of finding your people and sense of belonging was something that was an underlying fundamental value of what the Developers Alliance was about. So leading into that, one of our hard things to figure out was who is the Developers Alliance for? And, at a high level, it's easy to say, well, obviously it's for developers. But one of the things that came up within our group when we were trying to come up with a label for who it really was for was, is it for students? Is it for software creators? Is it for technical professionals, right? Like, where are the lines for all of those different things? And there was, the startup community was pretty heavily represented in the board, as well as the sort of enterprise and corporate community. And what we found was that as we were toying around with, phrases that we were thinking would sort of catch all of these, like the enterprise people who are maybe software architects or database administrators did not identify as developers. And at the same time, the software creators, right, does not necessarily include entrepreneurs and people who want to start technology companies. And so we kind of got into the weeds of that for about 2.5 hours until we finally landed on the Developers Alliance being for software professionals. And that was really an impactful thing for us to figure out, because once we understood that was our core constituency, we start to understand who are the stakeholders among software professionals, right? They're students who are aspiring to be professionals, and people who are maybe hobbyists who are aspiring to get paid as developers, or maybe they just do it as a hobby, but they want to be around professional developers and have that knowledge exchange. But that also goes on to talk to corporate, right? So the GCIs, the ConocoPhillips, the state of Alaska, they need to be connected to talent somehow. And it's really difficult and intimidating as a student to kind of bridge that gap and just like walk in and hand in a resume. And so really what we can do as the Developers Alliance is bridge that gap for all of those different demographics. And so getting into that, right, understanding more about, who we're currently serving has been really interesting, because we identified a few underlying problems that we're working to get better at and fix as an organization. So the number one is that the majority of programmers in the state are actually employed by telco, healthcare, oil and gas, and the state. That is the smallest demographic of participation currently of the Developers Alliance of 330 people. So I see that as a massive opportunity in that, like, we're a thriving community and we haven't even tapped the largest population of programmers in the state. So who are our current participating constituents and demographics? Well, they're professionals with no kids between the ages of 25 and 45. That looks a lot like me, which makes perfect sense, right? I was the one who was sending out the original newsletters and organizing with people and students up in Fairbanks, and Vince and Arsh. And so it kind of makes sense, right? Like, we created this sort of for us by us, and that's who it's been marketed to. And that's where our events are 7 p.m. on a Thursday. And it makes perfect sense that somebody with kids would not be able to participate, because they're going to, maybe go home and eat dinner, or maybe it doesn't make sense to go home. But either way, if they come at 7 p.m., they may not see their kids and be able to put them to bed at night, right? Like, that's a pretty big hit for a weekday night. So the majority of our participation are mid to senior level developers between the ages of 24 and 45. Then next is students, aspiring professionals, corporate organizations who we have almost no engagement with, and remote organizations, which actually they should probably be a little bit higher in there. So the next is really understanding who and why we're marketing to each of those demographics. So within this, right, like we sort of have like a broad messaging, but unfortunately that messaging does not necessarily speak to each of those demographics. So students don't necessarily know, why should I be participating in the Developers Alliance? And this came up recently because students in Fairbanks, their week does not end on Thursdays like it does in the University of Alaska Anchorage. And so for them, they could be doing homework as opposed to showing up and participating on a Thursday night when they've got class on Friday. So that's one thing that was positive that came out of this. The second, professionals without kids. Well, raise your hand, right? That's probably the majority of the room here tonight. Professionals with kids looks cool, but 7 p.m. a weekday, probably not going to happen very often. Thank you, Jeremy, for showing up and showing off your Minecraft mods. And then entrepreneurs in the surrounding ecosystem, right? They're not developers. They might be designers. They might be people who are interested in starting companies. They might be companies with existing businesses that need software and projects built. They would have no reason to come and contact us. And so that's another demographic that we can target and build messages around to be welcoming within the community. Major takeaways, we can better serve students with better partnerships to corporate by creating a more holistic ecosystem. By getting connected with corporate, we can get students jobs and employed a lot easier, which gives them an incentive to participate with us. And then we can also turn around and show that value to them, and create messaging for them so they know why they're coming to participate. The other big things is that really, I think just continuing to grow is our number one focus, and also continue to distribute the workload of leadership by either growing the board, making it easier for people who maybe have little spurts of time but don't necessarily have time to dedicate to a full board position. But the more people that we can get participating in the Alliance, the more opportunity is going to be created, because as people find it easier to get jobs, then more people are going to, try ideas and build side projects and meet other people within the community, and those can turn into businesses. So kind of the bottom line of all of this is that creating a more inclusive ecosystem of students, developers, corporations leads to more companies, more jobs, and more opportunity. So that's really where we're headed for 2020. We're not a closed group. We post all of our board meetings online. They're also on the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in getting in touch with leadership or participating more, there's a Leadership 2020 on Slack, and just feel free to ping any of us in leadership. And then the other thing is, if you have any connections with oil and gas, telco, hospitals, the state of Alaska, we'd really love to make those so we can start to close that loop. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Yeah.
So, a
little louder.
You consistently asked people to fill out the survey.
Yeah.
And I never understood. Am I supposed to fill that out more than once?
No. So the reason.
Make sure you fill this out.
That's why.
Yeah. So the reason
how do
is,
you know those are all unique submissions?
because we forced you to put in your email. So.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's
I couldn't remember.
yeah, exactly. So, and I think that happened to a lot of people. That survey was open for like 8 months or something from the first time we sent it out. This next year, we're going to do a better job of like putting a time window on it. So it might be, from the time we do the boot camp until the end of the hackathon or something.
Yeah, we'll have that a little better arranged, and we'll also give a little bit of background as to why we want you to fill that out, the survey, for these sorts of metrics.
Yeah. The other thing is, it's sort of for me, it was really bizarre to see that. I'd started talking with some community-oriented organizations, Launch Alaska, right, who's our primary benefactor. They're our main sponsor of the $12,000 a year. And for me, it was like pretty surreal to see that we wrote a draft of the white paper, and then we buttoned it up, and then we passed it out, and then we got $60,000 funding. And so a big piece of the reason that we do this survey is the more that we can understand our developer community, the more we can take that information to corporate and organizations who will give us money to create a better ecosystem and provide more boot camps and more perks for the community.
Yeah, and if anybody wants access to the actual data, the underlying data, let me know, and I can give you access.
Yeah, we'll sanitize the emails out of it, but otherwise, the data is totally up for grabs if anybody wants to study it. Any questions in Juneau or Fairbanks? Cool. All right, guys. Well, last thing. Was that somebody in Fairbanks?
Not us.
Okay.
Feedback.
Did you wanna pull somebody at random, Dave, for the JetBrains IDE?
Oh, from
Slack. And by at random, I mean if you choose a number between 1 and 16, I will select that person from the Slack list, and they get a JetBrains IDE license.
7.
7. All right. So that would be Chip M from Kenai. Cool. So somebody from Kenai won a JetBrains IDE license. All right. Very cool. All right, thanks guys for joining us tonight. I think there's usually a small contingency from each location that, or at least Anchorage, we wander over to the Blue Fox. I think some people in Fairbanks head over to the pub, but yeah, look forward to seeing you guys and hanging out. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for sacrificing the charge on your laptop. What's the final tally?
The recording has stopped.
Wow. That was really amazing. Did it work?
It did, yeah.